Hey guys, it's Jason. I'm here with Steve Sabins, assistant coach at West Virginia. Coach Sabins was at Oklahoma State prior to being at West Virginia. He's been here since 2016. Has put together perennial top 25 program, ranked in the top 15 last year, I believe. Regionals, hosting, top recruiting classes, and good friend of mine now, and a guy that I really trust and value the opinion of the college side. So we wanted to give you guys a chance to hear from Coach Saban. So, Coach, how you doing?
Doing good. What's up, Burke, man? You're pretty advanced technologically these days.
We have a social media person that we hired who's awesome, and she sets it all up for me. So I just click buttons, send off links, and I'm done. So don't be fooled. It's definitely not me. I'm actually terrible at this stuff. So luckily we're live and we're able to figure it out. So one thing that we've really talked about a lot with our high school athletes, I think it also translates to our youth teams as well, is just some of the intangibles, some of the things that you look for in players when you're recruiting that maybe don't show up on a stat sheet. So when you see a player, you identify that he's a really good player, a guy that fits at West Virginia. Let's just say you have 4 guys that you feel like are fits that all play the same position. What are some things that you see that you look for that you can help kind of weed through and decide which one of these 4 players is going to be the best fit and the best guy for West Virginia?
I think one of the biggest things when we're looking for players to come to West Virginia is that guys that want to win. And although that's probably super cliche, I think now that's a little bit more of a individual outlook, a little bit more of a focus on showcase and personal gain in the summer sometimes. I think sometimes that most important factor of wanting to win is lost. And so there's a lot of kids that are really into having success on their own. There's guys that are into rankings. There's guys that are into specific metrics. But when it comes to wins and losses, not everybody has been groomed to make that the most important thing. So if you have 35 guys on a roster that are dying to win, it makes roles become a lot easier. Guys are willing to accept their roles and understand their roles and slowly develop and get better and jump into greater roles. If it's more about me, a lot of times coaches have trouble, especially early in careers, because not everybody that comes to West Virginia as an 18-year-old is ready to compete at the highest levels. Not everybody's ready to be the Friday night starter or the starting shortstop. You have to grow into those things. And so I think that the desire to win might be that we look for. And that can be found in body language. That can be found in recommendations from coaches. I think when you watch a player, there's certain plays that happen throughout a game that will allow you to understand if a guy's really playing to win. Is he locked in on dirt ball reads? Is he willing to take a walk in a big moment, or is he chasing hits? Is he trying to get the hit in the big moment? Just guys that are wired to win and help the team win. That's the most important thing. It's hard to find. It's not really an easy characteristic to find, guys that are dying to win ball games.
And to your point, I think that when you look at kind of the travel ball scene, it becomes very individualized, and guys want to showcase themselves. So they feel like that's the best way for them to get seen by a coach, is to stand out. But I think that, again, after you've identified they're a good player, one point that another coach brought up was when he sees how the other players act when he scores a run, or vice versa. Is there truly happiness for team success? I think that gets lost. That's something that we try to harp on, is as the team plays better, as we all enjoy success, that's going to create a better culture for all of us, and then we're all going to get seen. We're all going to have a better chance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. We tell to our players all the time. I mean, baseball is a game that everybody's chasing something individually, and that helps with motivation to some extent. If you're a high school kid and you're chasing a college scholarship, if you're in college, you're chasing the draft. If you're the starter for the Angels, maybe you're chasing the All-Star game. Maybe you're chasing the new contract. There's always something that you can chase if you want to be in that mind frame. You know better than I do. It's the guys that are happy with where they're at and they love playing and they let the chips fall. those are the guys that are really good. They say, I'll look up at the end of the season. I'll worry about my contract. I'll look up at the end of the season and worry if I'm a prospect for a professional organization. I'll look up at the end of the season and see if somebody wants to offer me a scholarship. The guys that are always looking up and figuring out where they stack and what they do, they don't usually go as far. They're not usually as successful. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And as you kind of look into the recruiting as well, I think one thing that our families question a lot is, how do our athletes from Wisconsin get opportunities to play outside of Wisconsin? And when you look at some of the, we only have one Division I school in the state. We only have one Division II school in the state. So it's predominantly Division III schools. So for the kids that are trying to get out of Wisconsin, how is it different for you guys recruiting in-state versus out-of-state kids?
Yeah, I'm not a great one to ask. We had 3 kids from the entire state of West Virginia on our roster last year. So we're a very small, predominantly rural state. There's 1.8 million people in the whole state, and we're going up against, perennial powerhouses in Texas Tech and TCU and Oklahoma State, University of Texas. So there's more people in Dallas than there is in the state of West Virginia. And so we have to be very creative in our recruiting. And so we have boys that are in your program that are coming to West Virginia. We look all over the country. I want the guy from Wisconsin that's working his butt off and that I could call somebody that I respect like you, and you can give me the rundown on him, because we have to go find players that can help us beat Texas and TCU and Texas Tech that maybe aren't being as recruited as heavily. And so that's our game plan. I truly believe, like, if you can really play, you're probably going to be found, because there's enough coaches like you that want to put together really good programs and win ball games and be reputable in this space. So I think hooking yourself up with somebody that is knowledgeable, reputable, consistent is the best thing that anybody can do. And I'm not just tooting your horn, but yet you have to find somebody that's done it. You have to find somebody that has some connections, that knows some coaches, that's willing to put their name on you if you want to be seen, because it's a hard flight to take to Wisconsin unless you really believe in somebody, that somebody's telling you something honest, because there's not very many people that can play at West Virginia. So I think the most important thing, no matter what level that you can play at, is you got to hook yourself to somebody that you believe. And so ISA is an awesome thing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So when you, with our discussion today, I really want to dive into the hitting. I think that's something that we've talked about a lot in the past. I think your hitting philosophy tends to line up a lot with what we're teaching here at ISA. I think that we've seen a trend as of late with the launch angle. So when you think about, and we'll kind of just stick just on launch angle, what is your overall thought on the trend that's being taught now, and how do you guys approach the idea behind the launch angle at West Virginia?
I think we use everything. Definitely not scared of anything. We have TrackMan on our field, which measures every metric known to man, all data points. And so every swing that's ever taken, we know the launch angle, we know the exit velocity, every pitch that's thrown, we know the velocity, the spin rate, the horizontal movement, the vertical movement. We have all that information because it's so common. We have Rapsodo in our bullpens. We have radar guns that have spin. It's so common. It's part of who we are, but it's not something that we cherish. It's not something that we are recruiting players because of. It's simply a metric. And so it's just like a guy running a 4-1 down the line, or an outfielder that throws 92 from the outfield or 72. It's strictly a metric. And so it might help us understand how a player plays, but we certainly aren't coaching to that, if that makes sense. Depending on the type of hitter that you are, may indicate where your launch angle should be, more commonly. So if you're a very fast, smaller guy, but your ball is always in the air, it's probably not a very good setup for you. If you are a power hitter and your average launch angle is 9 and you hit a lot of ground balls, well, it probably means you're not a power hitter. And so we're not coaching to that. That's strictly for us. When we bring kids in and we talk to them, we're indicating what type of player you are and how you're built and what you do great. And so that might be a coaching point. Hey, instead of saying, hey, you hit the ball in the air too much, or you hit the ball on the ground too much, we might speak a kid's language that wants to hear, your average launch angle is 4, and we brought you here to hit doubles and homers. Like we'd love for you to hit the ball in the air more often. Or the opposite conversation happens a lot too. You're a 6'2", 165-pound center fielder that flies, and your average launch angle is 38, and guys are jogging under your balls in left field and catching them. And so that's not a good setup for you. And so I think where it's gotten carried away probably at your level, and maybe what you're addressing more, is just this desire to change your swing mechanically in order to hit the ball at the top of the cage, or to hit the ball straight up into the air. And so for every ideal or philosophy, I think people can take it too far, and it can break down swings and can break down mechanics and probably hurt a player over the long haul. There are some very simple concepts of hitting that have applied for a long time that certainly still apply. And, some of the main ones are ability to land on the barrel and hit the ball hard. And if you talk to a lot of big leaguers, I think they'll tell you that they try to hit line drives and try to hit the ball hard. Might be the most common things that you hear all the time. So, with social media, there's just a lot of experts. There's a lot of experts, and there's a lot of gurus, and there's a lot of probably misinformation, just like there's misinformation in everything, right? It's not just the baseball world. It's, if you want to find faulty information online, you can. And so I think that's where it's probably gone a little bit, and that's probably the frustration you have the most. I wouldn't say as much affected at our level, just because we try to embrace all that, because I think as soon as you start fighting it, you get this strange pushback, kind of like you're not willing to change and you're not willing to grow. And that's certainly not the case. It's just making sure we understand what's best for kids' development. That's where, whatever that is, we're willing to do.
Yeah. So knowing that you guys are obviously trying to, tailor and customize everybody individually, not trying to have a cutter approach to hitting, but what would you say your core values and some of the things that you try to instill in every hitter when it comes to, a hitting philosophy for you?
Yeah, I'm a huge bat to ball skill guy. So I think some coaches might be into power. Some guys might be into speed. Some guys might be into opposite field hitting. Obviously, I'm into all that. I'm a hitting coach, but I think the biggest one for me that I try to train and I want guys to be concentrated on is the ability to adjust their barrel to land on the ball. So that bat to ball skill. And so however we can train in order to increase the bat to ball skill, especially at the college level, the ability to limit strikeouts, bat to ball, and have quality at bats is a huge focus of mine.
And going back to a comment earlier about, guys being able to be kind of self-aware and adjust to what kind of hitter they are, how important do you think it is for players to understand what kind of hitter they are and utilize their strengths to become a better overall hitter? Like you said, for a guy that's batting leadoff, it's a table setter, you want to get on base, maybe he doesn't have a ton of power. It's more important for them to try to hit the ball in a line and a gap and run. So can you talk a little bit about just the importance of knowing what kind of hitter you are, which is going to also, I would assume, in return, enhance the hitter you are?
Yeah, it's massive. It's everything, and there's a lot of different ways to be a productive offensive player. And there's some really interesting metrics, and I'm into that as much as anybody. And I read and I try to understand. And a kind of an interesting one for me is a metric that's called runs created, and they measure that. And we do our own form of kind of figuring that out. We talk about barrels, and we talk about getting to base and RBI. Those are three things in our program that we measure that's on a goal board. But runs created is basically, if this guy took 27 at-bats in a game, how many runs would you actually score? That would be runs created per 9 kind of situation. But there's a lot of different ways to get there. So some guys, they could have a really high runs created. They could be super valuable offensive player if they ran into 4 balls a game and hit 4 homers. There's other guys that if they could draw 4 walks and get a hit by pitch and hit a double and steal a base, they would be just as valuable. And so certain players, if they're unable to hit homers or steal bases, you need to do something different to be a valuable offensive player. And so when we're recruiting, we're always trying to find how can we get players that help create runs that are undervalued potentially. So probably the most valued thing in baseball that everybody loves to talk about is the homer. So in recruiting, if you're going to offer scholarships, the most expensive stat that you could possibly go recruit is going to be a guy that can hit homers. But a guy that has great instincts on the bases, or a guy that has more walks than strikeouts, or a guy that never chases outside of the zone, or guys that barrel percentage is super high, those guys might be just as valuable in creating runs without leaving the yard. And maybe you don't have to pay those guys as much. And so without a doubt, you can be a successful offensive player in a lot of different ways, and understanding who you are is critical. We have a kid that I love on our team, and he's a superstar. He wants to be in the middle. He loves the big moment, which I really appreciate. He wants the bat in his hands with the game on the line. And I think if he plays a whole season, in 2020, I think he hit 320 or 330 in a shortened season. If he had a whole season, he's a 300 hitter, which is not easy to do in our league. But he usually strikes out about 4 times as much as he does walk. And he's going to steal 25, 30 bases a year. But if he could find a way to strike out less and have a more quality 2-strike approach, he goes from being like a 370 on base guy with a very low amount of extra base hits to now a 450 or 450 on base guy, and he's stealing bases. Now he's extremely valuable. He's a draft pick. And so literally that guy can increase his value to a team significantly just by walking and swinging at better pitches. Mm-hmm. And so that has nothing to do with, your attack angle, your launch angle, your exit velocity. None of that comes into play. That comes down to approach and awareness of who you are. And there's a million different ways, depending on the type of hitter that you are, that you can become better. And I think that's hard for young guys to understand. They're very, very interested in mechanics of the swing because we've created that. There's enough people that, give lessons and work in cages, and they want to concentrate in that area versus maybe a little bit more of a boring area, which is repetition and approach and live at bats.
Mm-hmm. So you basically hit my next question was, when you're looking at recruiting kids, so I think all these kids are infatuated with, I have to hit homers to get recruited, or I have to hit homers to stand out, where I think that the lost value that a lot of good coaches that are recruiting the right way, there is value, and guys can get recruited by being just an overall very good hitter who's very productive in every facet of the game, not just home runs.
There's no doubt about it. And, we want to see a guy that can hit a breaking ball and a breaking ball count. We want to see a guy with a really good two-strike approach, I love to say I haven't seen the guy swing and miss yet. There's certain things that coaches like to continue to follow that will make a difference. I mean, talk about balance. You talk about guys swinging at good pitches. You talk about an ability to hit a breaking ball, executing when asked. There's just so many different facets than running into a ball and hitting it far. And that absolutely matters. I mean, being able to have juice in your bat, it matters, and you have to train that, and you have to work hard, and physicality and bat speed's part of the game too. It's just it's not necessarily more important. It's just equally as important.
Yeah. I've heard you say a couple of times now, two-strike hitting, situational hitting. I know it's obviously a kind of a broad question. There's obviously a lot of different situations that can happen, but what's something that you try to instill in your guys when it comes to two-strike hitting? Because I feel like that's kind of a lost art right now, is my 0-2 swing and my 2-0 swing are going to be the same swing because I want to try to hit a bomb. But kind of talk to us about what you guys look for and what you guys try to instill in your guys when they fall behind the count and there's and they're in an 0-2 hole. What's something that you want your guys to do?
We don't make physical adjustments mandatory at West Virginia. I'm a believer in them. I think there's different adjustments for different hitters, meaning if you're a guy that we really see is a huge power player for us, we might not want him to choke up and to change his approach. We might live with more strikeouts for that kind of player. Whereas someone that's more of a contact hitter, we may really want him to make a large physical and mental adjustment because he's in the lineup maybe for defense, maybe to suck more pitches out of the starting pitcher for some different reasons. But I think the base thing that we talk about a lot at WVU is our two-strike approach is the ability to hit the pitcher's best fastball on the outer black. And so that comes down to the fact that when umpires set up, they set up on the inside corner, so they're much more likely to call pitches that are 1 or 2 balls off the plate away. If you watch a million baseball games, you see guys that get rung up on fastballs away very, very commonly at the lower levels, and fastball ends and get balled, and they don't get called hardly at all. So we have to cover fastball away. Also, for a pitcher's sake, especially at college and high school, the least comfortable pitch for amateur pitchers to throw is a fastball in located, because if they miss, they're going to hit the batter. And if they miss one direction, they're going to hit the batter. If they miss the other direction, they're going to miss in the middle of the plate, which coaches can, they're going to scream at you for why are you giving up a hit or a cookie with 2 strikes. Mm-hmm. So the most common pitch in baseball with 2 strikes at the amateur level, without a doubt, is a fastball extended away. And it's a very safe pitch because they know if they miss, it'll be too far, no problem, it's a ball. If they miss on the other side, it's probably on the outer third or middle of the plate. Also, hitters, predominantly, as you know, are very rotational and they're pull-oriented, and they want to show that power, and they feel comfortable pulling the baseball. So really the lost art is the ability to stay on a pitch and stay through a pitch and drive it the other direction. So pitching coaches know that. Everybody knows that. So when in doubt, 2 strikes, the most common pitch is a fastball away. And the real reason that we're going to be able to master that and be on that kind of timing is because what we want to do as hitters with 2 strikes is to protect against all pitches. We don't have the luxury now of being on a specific pitch. We have to cover all pitches and all locations because we're not willing to go walking back to the dugout. So if you're on a fastball away and you're going to hit that deeper and have a later timing and drive that pitch the opposite direction, you're going to have the ability to hit a bad breaking ball or a bad off-speed pitch that's left in the middle of the zone. Mm-hmm. Those pitches that are mistakes with 2 strike that a pitcher tries to baby or leave up, those pitches need to be hit for doubles and for home runs. And if you're a little bit late on the fastball, it means that you might be on time or a little bit early on the breaking ball, which is an okay thing. if you're early on the fastball, you have no chance of hitting a slower pitch with 2 strikes. So you're going to swing over, change up, and breaking ball. You're going to over rotate on an off-speed pitch going away from you. So the base approach with 2 strikes, our guys have to master the ability to drive a fastball away to the other gap. Essentially, that'll put us on time for slower pitches. That's our plan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very similar to what we teach. And when we're texting a couple of days ago, and you had texted me some things that you thought about hitting. One of them was trusting your swing. So when you hear that, or you're trying to tell it to a kid, what exactly do you mean by trusting your swing?
Yeah, I think everything in baseball, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you get psychological, everything goes back to trust. So like, whatever you teach, whatever you learn, whatever approach you have in the moment, you have to set your mind and then go. Set your mind and react. If in the back of your head you don't trust, then everything's always going to break down. So if my approach with 2 strikes, it's very easy to talk about, but okay, I'm going to be on a fastball away. I'm going to hammer this fastball in the other gap. I clear my mind and I go compete. If in the back of my head I'm going, oh man, I hope he doesn't throw a fastball in here. I hope he doesn't blow me up on the hands. I'm going to get jammed. I'm not ready for this. My body tightens up. My shoulders come off. I rotate and I get a fastball away like I should have been on. And I roll that over to the 6th hole or I roll that over the third baseman if I'm a right-handed hitter. So no matter what you're doing, it's kind of like it's playing the stock market. It's playing the numbers. You have to stick to your plan and your approach over the course of a season to be successful. If you're always bouncing back and forth and you're buying stocks and trading stocks and you freak out when you're struggling a little bit, you're never going to be successful. You're always chasing your tail. So it's about having a really sound plan and approach and sticking to that approach over the course of a season, not emotionally changing because you're 0 for 3 and a guy jammed you once. That's baseball. And so having the ability to trust what you've worked on and how you've prepared is everything. And you and I both know you can't possibly trust or have confidence unless you've put the work in. It's like showing up to a math test and not have studying any of the material and trusting you're going to do well. It's not going to happen. Yep. You're out of luck. And so if you put the work in and you've thought about it and you've had the approach, now it's time to let go and trust and let the ability take over.
I think what happens to a lot of guys, myself included in my career, you always assume something's wrong. If you don't have success, you assume that something didn't go right, or that you need to change now because you had a bad outing. That's one thing that my agent, someone you know well, Mike always said was just stay the same. Be the same guy. When you're going great, remember how it felt when you're going great. When you're not going great, there may be a tweak or something that you may have an approach or a mindset. But overall, it's not time to panic and change everything because, again, to your point, you spent 6 months in the cage in the offseason getting your swing right. Then you get in a game and things don't go perfect. Now you just want to change and make things different just because you feel like you have to. So when you think about guys, inevitably you're going to go through a rough phase. You're going to go through a slump, whatever you want to call it. Is there any key phrases or key terms or key things that you tell your guys to kind of fall back on, whether it be whatever it is, a buzzword or a phrase? Do you have those kind of things at West Virginia you instill in your guys?
Yeah, and I get crushed for them, and I actually I love it because our players will tease me, and if they're teasing me with the things that I say, it fires me up because I know that it's gotten into the psyche.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because it's gotten in there so deep because it's been repeated so many times that I feel like what I'm doing is successful. So the two that I can really think of off the top of my head are, I say calmer and calmer all the time, because as hitters, when we struggle, it tends to get tenser and tenser and a little bit more football mentality and trying harder. And it's just not the sport. It has to be so relaxed and so easy and carefree and effortless and quick. And none of those words can happen when we're trying really hard. So it's usually you're just digging yourself a hole when you fail, you try harder. When you try harder, you grip the bat firmer. When you grip the bat firmer, your swing breaks down, and it's just this vicious cycle. And so I'm kind of the hippie in the dugout telling guys, calmer and calmer, relax, loosen up the grip. It's all good, babe. I'm that guy because I just know hitting's so difficult. And if you put added pressure on yourself, you have a very little chance to succeed. The other one that I use, that it seems ridiculous, but I tell our guys to use their eyes, because I think that simplifies the focus into this singular action that you can actually complete. Hitters, a lot of times when they get in there, their mind's racing. They're thinking about their elbows and their hands don't feel comfortable and when to fire their hips, and they need to get under the ball. And is it a fastball? Is it a curveball? Any additional thoughts while we're hitting is a recipe for disaster. You have no chance with thoughts going through your head. I really believe that it's an approach where you set it and then you clear and then you react. We don't have the luxury of being able to think while we're hitting. And so when I say use your eyes, I'm literally telling hitters to make sure that your focus is specifically to see the ball out of the pitcher's hands. That simple. Use your eyes, see the ball, pick up spin, find location, quit playing this battle inside yourself with mechanics and approach and situation and counts. See the ball, see the baseball and see the laces and see the spin and put a good swing on it. And for whatever reason, I think that's really helped guys.
It's funny because I when I was younger, my dad used to always say, just see it and hit it. And I was like, I'm like, I never had, I didn't really do hitting lessons. I didn't really, break up. My dad always said, hey, just see the ball and hit it. Just see it and hit it. And sometimes, to your point, that's just to me, that's going to be the best advice you ever have, just see it and hit it. So I like that because, again, I think we try to feel and analyze every part of our swing. And when we do that, you got no shot. So I think the idea of being and trusting, seeing and hitting it are all things that are super, super awesome.
And I'll hammer it and I'll get into it. I mean, honestly, like we dive into video analysis and we dive into metrics and we did KVS testing and we do a lot of testing with mechanics and analytics and video work, and we give feedback and we make suggestions. And then once we hit the spring, guys come back from Christmas break, I try to eliminate almost all of that talk. Mm-hmm. Like there's almost none. It's like, hey, did you put good barrel on? Did you square it? Awesome, man. Knuckles. Like I'm not going to talk to you about your back hip load right now. There's a time for that, but it's not a week before the season, and it's not after you go 0 for 3 against Texas. Like it's just not the time. And so there's different times for what we're training and why we're training.
Because one thing I've written down is you have your game swing, you have your practice swing. I think that maybe the swing itself doesn't change a lot, but more so just the approach and the thought process has to be different. The time you spend in the winter and time you spend in the fall, the time you're in the cage at the tee, that's the time to get mechanical and worry about that stuff, to try to get yourself in position to be really good and on time. But when the games come, it's time just to go see it and hit it. Talk about, for us, I know you guys added a huge weight room for the baseball team. This year, we've really done a lot more performance training, a lot more of the workouts. How important are our workouts and just overall being stronger, faster, better overall athlete for your program?
Huge. Can't state it enough. Can't believe in something more. I think it's at the forefront of our program, and those pillars, I would say, are strength and conditioning, sleep, nutrition, and recovery. We might focus more than anybody on those things. And it's a little bit like see it and hit it, because it's not magic sauce. It's just things that most people aren't willing to do. Mm-hmm. So it's not that we're smarter than anybody. It's just that there's enough data to suggest and prove that with specific strength training and speed training and what you put in your body and how many hours of quality sleep that you're getting, that you can improve your performance. It's just no longer something that can be argued. And so our job as to coaches is when we have true data about becoming a better athlete, if we're not implementing that at the highest degree, then we're not doing our jobs, in my opinion. If we know and we've been educated that there's certain things that will help you become a better baseball player, and we aren't taking that as serious as we can, we're just not doing our jobs. And so if you want to play at West Virginia, that is a huge part. We go as far as we have sleep bands that monitor our players' hours of nightly sleep. And so we know heart rate and resting heart rate, the amount of REM sleep that our guys get, the amount of interruptions in the middle of the night that they have, when they go to bed, when they wake up. It's not to micromanage kids' lives, or we have a realistic expectation of what college kids do and how they live their life. It's just we're not running a program that is going to accept mediocrity. We're not running a club sport. If you want to come here, it's because you want to be a big leaguer and you want to win championships and you want to maximize your time. And so the cool thing about that on the recruiting side is that we have more technology and more resources than anybody, but it actually helps weed out some players, because if they come on a recruiting trip to West Virginia and they really understand what we do, some kids aren't into that. Some guys might be like, hey, I'd rather you not know when I went to bed, and I'm not really about eating 5 quality meals a day, and I prefer not to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and I don't want to work that hard. I'm not into recovery modalities and blood flow restriction boots and cold tubs and light therapy and cryo chambers. Like, that's not really for me, Sabes. And then that's a great thing for us, because we really are. We're looking for the kid that wants to maximize his ability. And so I could talk for a very long time on that aspect. I believe that physicality is just a huge part of the game. It's not everything. You can be a great ball player and be the weakest guy on our team. That's not going to dictate the lineup whatsoever. It's about performing and playing baseball. But we want guys that want to get better. And if you're a kid that wants to get better, then you really fit in here. And if you're a guy that's okay with being who you are, it's probably not a great fit. And I think there's more college baseball going that direction.
So when you really think about the kids in high school that have bought into it prior to getting to college, and they have a program that's really into the training, do you feel like these kids that are coming into into college have a distinct advantage having already gone through that? Maybe not to the level that you're teaching, but just the idea behind buying into the strength training, committing to an off-season plan, doing the right things nutritionally. There's got to be a huge advantage for a kid that's already bought into that prior to getting to college.
Huge advantage. It's just it's a piggy bank where those kids have started investing 3 years before their counterparts. They're just ahead. They just get into the weight room. They can do movements quicker. And probably the biggest thing is the mindset of doing what it takes to be great. That takes a while. Like, we can pretend like people just get into programs and they get going and they're on the program. It's just not the case. Like, having the mindset of being able to push yourself and get better and do what's asked of you, and maybe do things that you don't enjoy in order to be great, that's difficult, and that takes time. No one can flip a switch. So that's a learned quality for all of us. So that takes years to really get to the point where you never skip a rep and you don't question the program, and you trust, and you just pay the piper every day. Like, hell, me and you are probably still working on that, right? It's just it's a continued life deal. And so if you can start doing that earlier, you got a huge leg up.
Yeah. Just want to touch briefly on, because I know for us, when it comes to being inside quite a bit up here, we have to, we spend a lot of time in the cage. We do a lot of stuff off tees. Are there certain drills, certain things off a tee that you guys, incorporate, maybe not a daily thing, but that you see a lot of your guys working on pretty consistently when it comes to the tee work and that kind of stuff? Yeah,
I think it's huge. And we talked about it yesterday with our coaching staff. We think next season, something that we can do better is making sure that our players go through a daily routine of tee work, front toss work, one-handed bat work, some different drills, and putting them in different positions before they ever step on the field to do any live work, because it's the concentration of those small detailed drills that really help you carry over. Because at the end of the day, it's realistic to get 100 tee swings and 100 front toss swings. It probably isn't realistic to get 100 live pitches from a BP thrower a day. So you're able to really groove your swing, and you're able to really concentrate on the things that you need to work on if you're incorporating that every day. And so we talked about making sure that our guys get those touches in before they ever get to the field every day. That's how much we believe in it. And we do 9 quadrant tee stuff very regularly. I think kids get in the habit of just setting up the tee and hitting it in the same spot over and over. I think it's very important to move the tee. It's kind of frustrating as a coach to see somebody just hit the same ball over and over, because we know that we're training to be able to adjust our barrel. Our barrel has to change almost every swing, and so we wouldn't want to just train every day off the tee the exact same way. We do lead arm, one-handed stuff. We think that's a really, really good drill for hitters, allowing their swing to sequence correctly where the lead arm and then the hand goes. We really like the lead arm swings. We open our body to we have our hips open to the pitcher with the tee off to our side, and we feel our upper body close and then release through the ball. We like that drill a lot. We do a lot of different front toss drills and with our lower halves, and you can do it with tee too, but we talk about walkthroughs where we're staying on pitches and our backside, our lower half's releasing through the ball in a specific direction. We work a lot on the ability to stay inside the ball. Getting the barrel casted out or around the ball is probably the biggest issue you see with high school players, is their barrel casting and hitting around the ball, and kids being very pole oriented. I mean, if you're working on a tee or in front toss, it's fair to say that good hitters will never hit around a ball, and they could hit 200 balls in a cage. You just never see a big leaguer's in a cage and he rolls over a ball to the pole side infielder. It just doesn't happen. So those guys are just very precise in how they work. They're inside everything, and they're finishing through everything. There's length through the baseball, and so those are really important things to us.
Yeah, it's awesome. It all sounds very, very familiar. So I'm glad that hearing it from you is reiterating a lot of what we're saying. I think for me, kids want to hit live. They want to have BP thrown to them, and I think that it's not cool, at a younger age. You want to face somebody, but what we try to tell these guys is 99% of the time you talk to high-level, elite-level players, coaches like yourself at a super high level, there's so much value. And again, it's not the end-all, be-all, but there's so much value to the tee. And one thing that Matt Weeder said was, when the ball's on a tee, I'm taking out different variables. I'm not worried about where the ball is going. It's not moving towards me. I'm hitting a stationary object, so the focus now can be strictly on my mechanics of my swing, where that's the time where I can really break things down. When the ball starts moving at you, it's hard to really focus and hone in on certain aspects of your swing that you want to master in order to get to a point where you're taking live BP.
Yeah, that's great. And it's like anything, if anybody's good at anything, they're able to work with progressions. And so tee is a progression to hitting live. Front toss is a progression. Batting practice is a progression to the game. You have to be able to break your swing down and understand what it's doing. I am a big fan of velocity training, because I think swings can be long and they can take too much length to get to the ball. That's one thing that can be negatively affected with tee work, and especially concentration on exit velocity off the tee. I still don't even know what that means. Like, I'm completely uninterested in how hard somebody can hit the ball off a tee, because it's not the sport we're playing. I like training off velocity. Obviously, I think that just helps shorten the swing and have kids understand that it's a game of putting the barrel on the ball. It's not necessarily a game of trying to create the torque in your swing, especially at a young age. If you're able to be short and repeatable and land on the baseball, you got a chance to hit.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, man, this has been an awesome discussion. Like I said, there's so many things that we talk about that you reiterated, some stuff that I think is going to help all of our kids. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time. We're super hopeful that we get a chance to see you this summer at some events. I'm optimistic that we will. But again, thank you so much for taking the time for us, and best of luck to the program, and hopeful that we get a chance to see you this summer.
For sure, Burke, man. Thanks a ton for having me on, and hopefully we'll get some more ISA guys in our program here coming soon.
You know,
I have
man.
a feeling we will.
Thanks, Sabins. I appreciate it. Have a good day, buddy. We'll see you.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.